ask my potential spouse, my fiance, to sign a prenup, or my fiance has asked me to sign a prenup. Should I do it? I get a few calls, I would say, a year about prenups. What I end up telling people a lot of times during our consultations or during the process of a divorce is, I wish you had had a prenup, or I wish you had had a postnup. Basically, a prenuptial agreement defines certain property as being non-marital and that it should stay non-marital. A family court judge only has the jurisdiction to divide or equitably distribute marital property. So if you and your fiance or your spouse define a particular piece of property, whether it's real estate, whether it's a bank account, whether it's the Hope Diamond that you inherited from grandma, regardless of what it is, if you define it as non-marital property and later you end up in a divorce and there's litigation over the property that you and your spouse own, that document, if properly executed, should exclude those pieces of property from the discussion table. In other words, those defined pieces of property get set on the shelf, and those aren't even up for discussion in the marital litigation. So a prenup can define those pieces of property. It can also talk about any gains, any increase in equity in those pieces of property, whether it be a business or a piece of real estate or a bank account. Now some properties are automatically, by our state statutes, considered non-marital, such as inherited property. I made the joke about inheriting the Hope Diamond from your grandmother, or gifts, significant gifts given to you by family members. Those things are already excluded by our law, but what happens in so many marriages is that those, unless it's the Hope Diamond, those monies or pieces of property end up getting sold and used to buy something else, or it goes into the investment for the new business that you started, and it gets so commingled that we call that transmutation. Transmutation is another topic, but the bottom line is, if you have a very clear prenup that defines that property and talks about the only ways in which it can be considered marital, or that it will never be considered marital, then you have a document, if you end up in a divorce situation, that will hopefully exclude that property from the discussion table. A postnup is very, very similar. Some people call it an anti-nuptial agreement, meaning after the marriage or after the nuptials have occurred. And that could be in the case of, we started a business, or I started a business, and maybe I inherited some money from my grandmother, and I'm going to start a business, and my husband's going to help me with it a little bit. But we want to define the fact that it's going to remain my business. If it ends up becoming an overnight sensation and the stock ends up getting publicly traded and the business becomes $1 million a year business, that business came from grandma's inheritance and it's always going to be mine. And you can imagine how, if you didn't have an agreement about that and the business really did take off and you got into a divorce situation, do you think that other spouse is going to sit by and say, no, I don't think I'm entitled to that? Probably not. They're going to want some of that property. So, and you could end up spending lots of money litigating those issues. So one way to define everyone's rights is to have a postnuptial agreement. Again, not often done. Those kinds of documents are rare. I think I've done maybe 2 or 3 of those in my practice. Of course, Anderson's a small place, so probably not as many people thinking on those terms. But it is possible. And if you'd like some more information about that, I'd be glad to talk to you about it. My office phone number is 864-226-7222. Our website is tandplegal.com. We've also got a YouTube page. We've also got a YouTube channel, and that channel has got lots of videos about family law, criminal law, accident law, lots of other things. So check that out as well.